Hello, this is a YouTube video that I am posting about my top five. First of all, hello, my fellow Survivor and reality show fans. This is John Michael DeBella, aka JM DeBella, and I'm going to be doing a video about, in my opinion, the most top five underrated winners of Survivor. Now I'm going to do them in the order on what season they won. Now my top five picks are maybe they're the ones you would least expect that I would put up there, but these are the five I am putting up there. The first one from Survivor the Australian Outback. Would have Tina won if Michael fell into that fire? We'll never know, but something that I think is overlooked with Tina Wesson is that she had a big play in making it far into the game. Her and Keith getting far into the game by having Colby switch sides on Mitchell, Amber, and Jerry. Because I think if she hadn't made Colby flip on his original alliance, Tina and Keith would have been out of there. I mean, there was no question about that. Maybe she wouldn't have won anyway. But, and Colby made it to the end with her, so she was able to orchestrate that, and she made it to the end. She basically saved herself from being loaded off, like, fourth or fifth, you know. She could have been out of there really quickly because, you know, she was older, just like Keith. Mitchell, Jerry, Amber, and Colby looked like they could have had the game, but Colby flipped. You know, she says, you know, I'm in trouble, and, you know, they made it to the end, and they needed a third guy, Keith, and so it was those two to the end. I just think people think that Colby got robbed. Well, I think Tina had a big play in how she made it very far into the game and how she won, because if she had never convinced Colby to flip on his original alliance of Mitchell, Amber, and Jerry, she would have been out of there. So she made a big play in saving herself and making it to the end with Colby. I think that Tina won probably because, I don't know if this was the play into the jury vote, but they felt like that she convinced Colby to take her with him, and that she had a big play in the Olga Core 3 making it to the end. But I just think she's underrated, and a lot of people say, oh, Tina did not deserve it, but I think she deserved it based on that play, that she was able to convince Colby to flip on his original alliance. Second most underrated winner of Survivor ever, Ethan Zahn from Survivor Africa. Now, I saw this on Survivor the first 21 days or first 24 days, which was like a recap of the couple first 24 days. And there was a scene that was not shown on an actual episode, but it shows Ethan going to either Teresa, aka T-Bird, or Kim Johnson, and right when the first ever tribal switch happened in the history of Survivor, and Silas, Teresa, and Frank came from Samburu, and Big Tom, Lex, and Kelly came from Baran. You know, Ethan was thinking, on that next immunity challenge, we should throw it so we can get rid of our biggest threat, which was Silas Gaither. He had 3 on the other side on Samburu, and when those 4 came together, they could have came back together, and maybe if they could have flipped Clarence and Kelly on their side, and then maybe Ethan, Big Tom, and Lex and Kim Johnson would have been out of there if that would have happened. I just think that Ethan was very smart, and that actually made a big play into how the merge came about with those four running the game until the final four. Well, mostly, I would say maybe Laxvik, Tom, and Ethan did most of the strategy, and Kim Johnson was just a fourth person to come along with. But, it's pretty. I think it's amazing how people don't think Ethan was strategic, but he made a big move early on in the game during the switch that helped him make it to the end and win the $1 million. Third underrated winner, Persepia Towery. This was Survivor Marquesas, the first season I ever saw in its entirety on television. I saw half of Survivor Africa, right where Clarence got voted off, but this was the first season I ever saw. Now, initially when I saw it, I thought that Persepia did not deserve the title of Survivor. I felt she was too low-key. She didn't really do much strategy. I thought that Hunter Ellis was robbed, who was the third one voted off, but looking back on it and watching it a few times, she was the original Sandra. She was under the radar. She didn't do anything to ruffle people's feathers. She didn't do anything to piss people off. And she, at the final three, she promised Nalia she'd take her to the final two because I think she knew she had a better chance of winning against Nalia than Kathy because everybody loved Kathy and Persepia didn't piss off as much people as Nalia did because, the jurors were the row to four and they assumed that Nalia was satisfied with 5 or 6, and so they were probably more upset with her because they were her from day one. So, so she was very low key. She didn't ruffle any feathers. She didn't really stand out as much as Nalia. Maybe that was why she won, because she was under the radar. And they say that a lot of people can't win Survivor flying under the radar, but I think you can if, depending on who the people you are with, if they're very out there and type A personalities, but if you're on the radar and you can just stay low key, but you're still playing the game, but you're not making it too obvious to the other people. I think with her, she was one of the most underrated winners. Survivor 9, and one of my favorite winners of all time, Chris Doherty from Vanuatu. He was targeted on the first vote out by the younger guys because he couldn't get across the balance beam. But, the younger guys were outnumbered 4-5 on Vanuatu. And so, even though that was kind of a dumb strategic move on the Lopevi tribes, it was done strategically to get rid of your strongest members because they can help you in challenges. I think that was kind of a bad strategic move on the Lopevi tribe's part, but Chris, by the final 10 at the merge, there were 4 original Lopevi members and 6 original Yasser members, so 4 men, 6 women. Rory is voted off. Sarge, Leah, aka Sarge, is the first jury member. Chad is the third person voted off at the merge, the second jury member. But then from then on out, the other 6 women, he outplays and outlasts them. And besides One World, there has never been a no, not One World, I'm sorry. This season is I think the only season where one tribe is almost decimated, besides Marquesas, of course, but I'm talking about in terms of it being men versus women, where by the final 7 there's 6 women and 1 man, and he was still able to outwit and outplay and outlast them. And I really think, no disrespect to the Survivor Ozlets, because I love Survivor Oz, but I really think that Chris Doherty should have been at least number 5 and the best Survivor winners to play the game because, I felt like number 8 didn't do him justice. I just think that he had to go through a lot. He had to outwit 6 other women, and basically he made an alliance with 3 other women. He was able, the 3 women, probably Twyla, Scout, and Eliza, probably felt like they were on the bottom of their alliance, so they didn't want to settle for 4th, 5th, and 6th place. So they sided with Chris. He got them further, than Amy and Leanne and Julie ever would have. Those 3 were the underdogs from the Yasser, so they were vulnerable and they came to Chris, and he won. He was able to bring the 3 on the bottom from Yasser with him to the Final 4, and he, by luck, won. I just think he doesn't get credited enough. Now, this is probably one that doesn't get mentioned a lot, and I was kind of listening to his interview on Survivor Oz that Ben Waterworth had with him, Earl Cole from Survivor Fiji. Now, here's an interesting story about Earl Cole. He never heard of the show Survivor. He didn't even know who Jeff Probst was when Jeff called him up and said, "Hey, we want you to be on this show. It's me, Jeff." And he's like, "Who?" So, Cole was kind of like Richard Hatch. It was like he was the first time he ever heard of the game, and the first time he didn't know what was going on, but he figured it out as he went along. So it's like Earl Cole really had his work cut out for him. It felt like a new game. It felt like like it was the first season all over again. Because he didn't really know the show because he was so busy with working. He didn't really watch TV, and he was able to outwit, outlast, and outplay all these other people who probably heard of the show. And it's like he was kind of like an underdog himself. He didn't really know the show. He never saw the other shows. He never knew who Richard Hatch was. He didn't know who all these other winners were, or even the premise of the show. He was like, okay, I'm being cast on the show, and so it was just pretty amazing how he was able to win the whole show without even seeing the show, or knowing that much about it. I think Earl Cole doesn't get as much credit for his win as he should, not just the fact that he won against Cassandra and Dreams, who Dreams wasn't well liked, and Cassandra just seemed like someone who just tagged along, but I really think maybe Earl might have beat Yowman if Earl was to say, well, I've never heard of this game before, or I don't know. I really don't know, but I think he is very underrated. And that honestly, I would have picked Earl as number 4 and Chris as number 5 on the best players to want to play Survivor, because I think those 2 are very underrated, and they deserve much more credit than that is given to them in their games. So comment on this if you agree with me about my most underrated winners and why they deserved it. Peace out.